We're live.
Thank you. Okay, good evening, everybody. We are here tonight as members or substitutes for the Governance and Resources Committee meeting, which is being held virtually, but it is being viewed live as we speak, or it can be viewed afterwards on the YouTube channel. So I'll move firstly to item 1 of apologies, please.
Councillor Flitter. Councillor Flitter.
Thank you. You're quite low volume, Ange. I don't know. I know we don't want to.
It may be that James perhaps will do the voting if I'm
okay.
Quiet.
Okay. Right, we've got the apologies. Can I just go through a roll call? I think we might have difficulty hearing you, Angela, but we'll see. Can we just do a full roll call so that we know that everybody's here and we can hear, please?
Councillor Allison.
We're not.
Yeah.
We're not picking you up very well at all.
Shall I take over, Chair?
If there is a sorry, Angela, yours is so quiet. I think we're going to have to use yourself, James, if that's possible.
No problem, Chair. We're prepared for this. So just going alphabetically, Chair, starting with Councillor Allison.
Here.
Councillor Archer.
Here.
Councillor Paul.
Here.
Councillor Bottle.
Here.
Councillor Chapman.
Here.
Cruz.
Here.
Councillor Donnelly.
Here.
Councillor Elliott. I don't see Councillor Elliott. Councillor Hill.
Here.
Councillor Hobson.
Here.
Councillor Hughes.
Here.
Councillor Morley.
Here.
Councillor Purdy.
Here.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
Here.
Councillor Slack.
Here.
Councillor Sutton.
Here.
Okay, thank you. So there's just Councillor Elliott, Chair, that
Okay.
we may be waiting for.
Right. Thank you. Now I've got somebody that's not actually on view. GZ809. Is that anybody? Is that not Councillor Elliott? No.
It'll be Glenn Burton, Chair.
Oh right. Sorry. Sorry, Glenn.
No.
I keep picking on your notes today.
I'm sorry, it's Gavin Barker from Mazars.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Thank you. Right. Okay, we'll make a start. We'll take it that Councillor Elliott isn't here. If he comes, then we'll take note that he's arrived. Okay. Item 2, approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, one of the 19th of November 2020 and the 17th of December 2020, which was a special meeting. Do I have a proposer, please?
Move them, Chair. Councillor Purdy.
Councillor Purdy's moved them. Seconder.
No, I'll second.
Happy to
Chapman.
second.
Whoever.
All in favour, show of hands if you don't mind, please. I think we're unanimous there. Thank you. Item 3, public participation. Has anybody sent in any requests to speak?
No, we haven't had any requests, Chair.
No, okay. I'll take that. Item 4, interests. Have any members got any interest to declare? Okay, thank you. Item 5, questions again? No, we just
No questions received, Chair.
Okay. Just before we go on to item 6, I just want to let everybody know that I need to change item 11 round, because item 11 on the agenda at the moment as it stands, it might be giving some disclosure of exempt information. And so during the debate, I'd like to propose that we move this to the end of the agenda after items 12 and 13 have been done, so that we can continue publicly until that's time, and then I will request for a vote on closing to exemption at that time. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 6, main item, external auditors annual audit letter and the request for approval of fees increase. I bring in Karen, thank you.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Just having trouble unmuting. Tonight this agenda item is about the approval of the annual audit letter and a request for a fee increase. Gavin Barker and John Presley from Mazars are here to present their annual audit letter and take any questions. But before they do that, I'd like to explain a little more than what I put in the report about audit fees and how they're set and varied, particularly for members that might be relatively new to the committee or a substitute. So the contract for audit fees was let to cover a 5-year period from the 2018-19 accounts to the 2022-23 accounts. And it's been let by a framework type contract let by Public Sector Audit Appointments, PSAA. As far as I know, most local authorities joined the framework contract, including all the Derbyshire local authorities. The contract ensured a consistent approach, and we hoped economies of scale, as well as being more efficient to the public sector, and such as ourselves, and to the auditors, rather than each individual local authority carrying out its own procurement process. Under this contract, PSAA informed local authorities before the start of each financial year of the fees for the coming year's audit process. These are negotiated nationally by PSAA. The scale fee for 2019-20 accounts that are being considered tonight was £29,487, and that was reported to the Governance and Resources Committee by the External Auditor on the 9th of January 2020. I'd like to stress and inform members that prior to this contract with the PSAA, audit fees were much higher. The fee for the audit of the 2017 accounts was £38,295. So we got quite a saving when we moved to the PSAA contract. On the 20th of August 2020, the External Auditor presented an audit progress report to this committee and explained key changes in the audit process, many of which related to the coronavirus pandemic. In that report, the External Auditor stated, there will be an increased audit fee to reflect the increased level of work that was not considered when the scale fee was set. And most of that related, as I've said, to the pandemic. But some of it related to some underlying issues where the codes of practice had become more rigorous. As you can see from the report before you now, there's a proposed fee increase of £10,102, 34%. And this comprises just over £4,000 as a one-off increase relating to specific issues in the 2019-20 accounts, and just under £6,000 for recurring increases in the base arising from additional regulatory requirements. So the fee for the 2019-20 accounts will be £39,589, and the base fee going forward for future years will be £35,397. So this is a return to the pre-PSAA levels, and it wasn't too much of a surprise to me, given the increasing complexity of the local authority financial accounts. Since writing the report, I've looked again at the PSAA website and the process for the variation in fees. As I've said in the report, any variations to the final fee will require the approval of the PSAA as it manages the contract for this work. So rather than asking the committee to approve a fee now, the PSAA will decide if the fee increase is justified and they'll tell us what we must pay under the contract. Therefore, I'd like to propose a change to recommendation 2 of this report, so that it now reads that delegated authority be given to the Director of Resources to agree the audit fee for the 2019-20 accounts with the PSAA, and that the additional fees for 2019-20 be incorporated into the revised revenue estimates for 2021, and the recurring element be built into the draft revenue budget for 2021-22 to be considered by Council on the 4th of March. I'll now pass over to Gavin or John from Mazars, who can go through the annual audit letter with you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Karen, for that sort of background and context to the annual audit letter, and particularly around the fees. In terms of the annual audit letter itself, this is a key document for us because it summarises the outcome of the audit. It's an outward-facing document. It tries to summarise the outcome of the audit. In terms of the detail of the letter, much of it reflects the final position around signing off your financial statements, given the opinion on the accounts and the value for money conclusion that we actually discussed in quite a lot of detail when we were sort of poised to sign off, but not quite able to sign off at the meeting of the committee in November last year. So I don't propose to go through it in a lot of detail, so I'll just pick out the main key points for you. What we do say in here is consistent with what we were saying in the audit completion report. So there was no significant changes from the position that we reported to you back in November, just prior to signing off. So the key outcomes of the audit, if you're looking at this in the report, it's in the executive summary. The key outcomes are that we were able to issue our auditor's report on the 2nd of December 2020. And that included our unqualified opinion on the financial statements. That set out the sort of basis that the financial statements presented a true and fair view and were prepared properly in accordance with the relevant guidance. We were also able to issue an unqualified value for money conclusion on the same date, and we were also able to report to the National Audit Office around whole of government's accounts as well on the same date. So the outcomes of the audit were very positive in terms of unqualified opinion on the financial statements, unqualified value for money conclusion, and there was nothing to report to the National Audit Office. So it was a good outcome. I must mention that, as members will be aware, the timetable both for the production of the accounts and for the completion of the audit was extended last year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And the date for the completion of the audit was moved from the end of July to the end of November. So we actually signed off a couple of days late on the 2nd of December. So we did everything we could to achieve the deadline, but we were waiting for some external information from a financial institution around confirming a balance that the council had with them, and we didn't get that until the 2nd of December, despite all the best efforts to do so. So I apologise for that delay, but I think the positive thing to take from this is it was only 2 days, and it was a sort of clear opinion on the financial statements. And that reflects on all the comments that I made at the meeting back in November around the arrangements that you have in place to produce good quality financial statements. And it's clear around the areas of economy, efficiency and effectiveness, the value for money conclusion, that the council also has proper arrangements in place across all of those areas. So the annual audit letter goes into a lot of additional detail on these areas. I don't propose to go into that this evening, or I'm quite happy to answer any questions that members might have in relation to any of that detail in there. As Karen mentioned earlier, the fees, the audit fees, this is a significant increase. I don't sort of shy away from the fact that it is a significant increase. As Karen mentioned, I think in the region of 34%. We did realised that there was going to be a significant increase. And I think at the meeting that I presented to you, I did mention that increases in the region, actually I think John might have been present at that meeting, we did talk about increases in the region of 20%. In the final analysis, the increase was extra in addition to that, and that was largely because of the specific issues that really arose from the pandemic and having to complete all our work remotely, having to do some additional work in specific areas of additional risk which related to the pandemic. So valuations of property, plant and equipment, additional work on pensions, and sort of additional things that arose in relation to the audit, specifically in relation to 2019-20. So as Karen has pointed out, the recurring element of this fee increase is £5,910, and that's something that we will expect to continue into future years. And the reasons for this are documented in a number of external reports and independent reports. It would seem that the audit fees that were negotiated in the last round of contracts have just gone to a level that the balance between achieving audit quality and having a sort of competitive fee, it's gone too far, and there's sort of seen as a need to redress this. And it's partly a response to regulatory pressures. As external auditors, we have regulators who review our work and try and drive sort of improvement. And our regulator, which is the Financial Reporting Council, has identified a number of areas where auditors need to do additional work, and that's reflected in that recurring fee element. And the areas of additional focus are sort of property, plant and equipment is a significant one, pensions, there's increasing scrutiny of going concern, and also additional specific work around looking at journals. So they're the sort of main recurring elements that are reflected in that fee increase. There was an independent review of the audit sector over 2020. It reported in September 2020. It was called the Redmond Review. And quite surprisingly, actually, Redmond identified that, and he was very specific about this, that he thought the audit fees in the public sector audit fees under this regime were about 25% less than what was required to deliver a quality audit, given all of the requirements. And that figure was a pre-COVID figure, that was without any impacts of COVID. We've tried to sort of be very fair in the way that we've set the fee. We're also being consistent with all of our clients, which is why it's difficult to revisit these figures or negotiate them, because we're trying to be sort of fair with all of our clients. We've derived these as the additional figures. I've provided Karen at her request with some additional detail to support the figures that we've arrived at. And we believe that they're fair and reasonable, but it is a significant increase, and we do recognise that, which is why we've been open and transparent about it in our annual audit letter, and we've provided quite a bit of detail in there to explain the fee increase. So those were the main comments I wanted to make around our fees. It's quite probable that members will have some additional questions, but that's the main thing I wanted to say around our fees. In terms of the forward look in the annual audit letter, the financial outlook is clearly very challenging. The pandemic now seems to be worse than ever. The council obviously has a key role as a community leader, and the financial position for the future is clearly very uncertain, and funding is on a sort of year-by-year basis, which makes it difficult to plan over the medium term. So the council faces all these challenges. We'll keep in touch with the council as it goes through these challenges, and that will inform our work for 2021. and beyond. There's a change to the Code of Audit Practice in 2021. That's outlined in the forward look. We'll provide more information on that when we present our audit strategy memorandum, which sets out our approach to the 2021 audit. But again, I suppose driving improvements in standards, that the approach to value for money has been revised, and there are some changes there in both the focus of the work and how we report to you, and that's all got to be worked through with you. And there's also reference in the forward look to the Redmond Review, because the Redmond Review, as well as highlighting the issue about audit fees, indicated that the audit market was quite fragile and needed to be sort of bolstered to be sustained. One of the other things that the Redmond Review identified was that the audit completion timetable of the end of July was just not realistic, given the demands and the complexities of the local audits that we're delivering. And government has responded to the Redmond Review and indicated that it intends to change the audit timetable for the next 2 years, starting in 2021. So the audit completion is not required by the end of July, it'll be required by the end of September. And that's going to take place for the next 2 years, and then it'll be reviewed after that. So that's something that's definitely going to happen. I think also part of the response to the Redmond Review was the government intends, I believe, to provide some additional funding to reflect the fact that audit fees need to increase. But that funding is just from 2020-21. It's not retrospective to the additional fees that are reflected in the paper tonight in relation to 2019-20. So thank you for listening. That concludes my comments. I'm quite happy to take any questions or listen to any comments that members might have. So thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Gavin. Okay, I'll move to questions. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for bringing me in first. And I'd like to thank Mr. Barker for presenting the report. And I'd like to thank Karen Hendrickson in particular for again managing our finances in such an exemplary fashion. And I think we have all got a lot of confidence in her ability to manage the finances for Derbyshire Dales, and I'm sure we would all like to pass on our thanks to her for her exemplary performance. I've got one or two questions, not on the audit itself. I'm sure that was done very well. And I'm sure that there was extra work involved in it as a result of the extra functions that the District Council had to perform due to the pandemic, and possibly because of the more difficult working environment brought about by the pandemic. My concern is really one of timing and one of
Can we actually get to a question, please?
Yeah, okay.
We'll go on to the debating.
I'd like to know when the additional work was identified by Mazars, when the additional price was estimated, why that additional price was, I think, probably relatively inaccurate, in that the final price was 50% more for the additional work than the estimated price. And then in particular, why wasn't the District Council informed of the additional price at an earlier stage? It was left very, very late. In fact, it was the final document, receiving the audit letter, when the District Council was informed of this. And working in professional services, I understand.
I'll take those questions now. Thank you, Councillor Hughes, and you'll be able to come back on debate, maybe.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Gavin, do you want to take those?
Yes, we did Your audit plan went to your committee. It was quite an early report of your audit strategy memorandum last year. I think it was in January last year, probably the equivalent of this meeting last year. And there was nothing in the written report that highlighted the pressure on fees. But verbally at the meeting, I did indicate that there was sort of pressure on audit fees. Most of our audit strategy memorandums were issued slightly later than that, and they highlighted in the audit strategy memorandum, in the written document, the regulatory pressures that we were coming under and the need for additional work to maintain audit quality. Clearly, everything went a bit pear-shaped with the pandemic, and I think what I decided to do was to report it to you in that report, because the committee wasn't meeting very regularly, and I think I reported it to you in that audit progress report, which I can't remember when the meeting specifically was, but it was a summer report, and I indicated in that report that there were significant pressures on audit fees, and that the view that we'd taken as a firm was that we were going to, because there was so much uncertainty around the impact of COVID on the audit, because we'd never completed an audit completely remotely before. We were normally on site, and because of the sort of difficulties in estimating accurately what the additional costs might be, that we'd taken the rather unusual decision to determine the final fee when we were completed the work, so that we could actually see how much additional cost there'd been. So we did actually report that in that report, yes, that's the sort of background to that. So we took that unusual decision, which was actually indicated as a possibility in the PSA documents, that it might not always be possible for the auditor to give a very clear estimate of the additional fee, and it might be necessary to sort of clarify things at the end. So we chose to follow that route.
Thank you very much, Gavin, for that reply. I'm going to just ask Karen, because obviously Councillor Hughes, just to indicate, as Mr. Barker has just said about that you were informed and giving you a bit of a heads up. Can you just clarify for the benefit of the councillors that that was the case? I know we had meetings, but you yourself knew that this could be coming forward.
Yes, this was flagged, as Gavin's just said, in the report that came to committee in August. I recall that John and Gavin forecast a 20% fee increase at that time, which is more or less what the ongoing fee increases turned out to be. At that time, they'd actually barely started the audit work, so I can understand that they hadn't been aware then of the additional work relating to COVID, and that covers the other £4,000 that they're now requesting.
Thank you very much for that, Karen. Councillor Ratcliffe, please. Question.
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions, one for Gavin and one for possibly either Paul or James. I'm picking up on paragraph 2.2, Gavin, about the effect and impact of COVID on the property market. Now, I understand what you're saying about the material uncertainty affecting valuations. I've been reading in respect of the housing market, it's having similar effects. But in fact, analysts are saying that when we come out of the market, out of the COVID, the market will hopefully become buoyant again and bounce back with possibly even additional valuations. Could you just give me a quick response to confirm my sense of optimism, as it were, that this is not going to be a very long-term depression?
Right, that's a very interesting question. I suppose what I've got to say from our perspective in the audit, we're looking at the valuation of the council's property, land and buildings at the end of March last year, the end of March 2020. And we're not valuation experts, so we are looking at the valuations produced by the council's valuer and provide an appropriate challenge to those. So what's reflected in the audit is very much based on the position at that point and the position as we were doing our audit work and the position at the point that we signed off. So we were very much looking at the uncertainties, which were quite significant and still are quite significant, really. I mean, I'm aware there are views that things might bounce back and things might be positive going forward. I'd like to share your optimism. I just think there's such a lot of uncertainty at the moment because I don't think we expected to be in this point in January when the vaccine was announced back in December, and look where we are. And there's clearly impacts in the economy that are going to ripple through and affect people to varying degrees throughout the economy. That's individuals and businesses. And who can really say how that's going to play out in the future? But I hope your optimism is right, but
yeah,
a bit backward looking as an auditor, so we tend to look at the evidence and time has sort of passed.
yeah. I mean, Azar's work is much appreciated by this authority. My next question.
Have you got another question? Sorry, Councillor.
Indeed, and this is going to either Paul or James. I think they would be the appropriate people. I'm picking up on paragraph 2.4, and I make this comment in the knowledge that we are in a public forum. I am absolutely despairing of the fact that it is now 3 years where some councillors have not completed their declarations of interest. How can we make this mandatory so that this does not continue beyond this year?
Yes, thank you. I will bring in James, I think, on this because it was touched at a previous meeting, Councillor Ratcliffe. So I'll bring in James. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. So just to be clear, in terms of registers of interest, all members are required to complete those within 28 days of their election or 28 days of any changes to their circumstances. And in terms of the implications of not completing that is a criminal offence, and it could become a police matter if members fail to do so. I suspect, and Karen and colleagues may correct me if I'm incorrect here, but this may relate to third-party declarations, which is a separate matter which we've touched on previously to this committee back in the autumn of last year. And I think what's probably occurring is that members think that having completed their register of interest, there's no need to complete the third-party declaration. The third-party declaration has to be completed annually. So one of the things that we'll be doing to ease this process going forward is to actually send an annual reminder in respect of both the register of interest and the third-party declaration at the same time, along with guidance on how to complete both and the offer of support where that's necessary. So just to be clear in response to you, Councillor Ratcliffe, this relates to that, and there isn't the same implication for members failing to declare that, but it does present a risk, not only in terms of the decision-making process, but also in terms of public confidence in our decision-making. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Councillor Buckle, please.
Thanks very much. This is a question, I think, for Gavin. It's about the pension fund. You said you did some extra work on the pension fund, and I know the Derbyshire County Council manages our pension fund, and that it managed to lose £65 million over the last 3 years in its oil company investments. Do you have any recommendation as to whether or not we should continue to use Derbyshire County Council to manage our pension fund?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. That's not really within our remit to comment on that, so I would probably avoid sort of commenting on that because it really isn't appropriate. It's normal practice to use the local authority pension fund in the area, and that's what the council does. We have to do quite a lot of work to verify the figures that are provided by the actuary, as well as sort of the figures that are provided by the pension fund. And that's what the reference in our annual audit letter is to, the additional work around looking at the supporting evidence for the figures that ultimately get reflected in your financial statements.
Yeah, so to be clear, you don't make a judgment on the fund, you just check that its numbers are fine.
Yes.
Right, thank you.
Is that helping you? I was just going to bring in Karen because I think she might have just a little bit more scope on the pension issue.
I think I would just add the comment that Gavin's just made, that it's normal practice that Shire districts use the appropriate county pension fund, and that's what we've done for as long as I've been at Derbyshire Dales.
Yeah, right, okay. Thank you for that. Okay, I don't see anybody else with any hands up for questions, so I'd like now to move into debate. Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of things I'd like to allude to. First of all, thank you very much to Gavin, Mr. Barker, for his honest and very fair feedback on the report. I have alluded to this before in a couple of meetings about crystal ball gazing, sorry. There's so much we don't know, and it's very difficult to decide on a particular figure. I think these figures are fair. He appears to be an honest man. If that might bring a smile to your face, Gavin, I don't know. And also thank you very much to Karen for expanding on the information that's been provided to us. For those of us who aren't qualified accountants, who might have done accountancy at GCSE, or may I even say O-level so many years ago, it's good to hear that we have confirmation of the information that's provided for us. Councillor Radcliffe alluded to assets and the price, and actually who knows? Nobody knows. We can all read in the newspapers every day and online and all this tweeting and twaddling and everything else that goes on about what's going to happen, but none of us really know. The circumstances that we're all in now has never ever happened before, and so I'd like to propose that we accept this letter and the proposal, and I think it's fair and honest. Thank you, Chair.
Can I just bring in something? Obviously, right at the beginning, Councillor Morley, Karen did state that she just wanted to change part of section 2 on the recommendation.
She did, yes.
Are you taking that as the proposal?
Absolutely,
and not as
what's
written as such on here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. To accept, yes, absolutely to accept that as well. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Do I find us at Councillor Purdy?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second that, and also thank Karen. We are in safe hands, Karen, and it's very comforting in these very troubling times. Thanks to Gavin and John. You've been quite quiet tonight, John. I don't know if you want to say anything, but I'm sure the Chair will give you an opportunity. But to Councillor Hughes, yes, we were notified, Councillor Hughes, and it was flagged up. And of course, on paper, it seems a tremendous increase, 30% on the total figure. But if you extrapolate the need to have to do that work, we would have had to pay that £5,000 odd in any case. And as Karen has mentioned, and I remember this, we did gain the benefit of that lower fee a few years ago. And I think had sort of average index price gone on each year, we might have arrived at this figure in any case. I know what Gavin's saying, and he's sounding some warning bells to us from the admin report and from government review, that evidently it seems that with Redmond saying that we're 25% below, we can expect some future increases. So it'd be interesting to see what the government come out with on that. So I'm happy to second, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hobson.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a comment, really, to say it does appear to me that it's been a very open and transparent process. Thank you to Karen for giving us a verbal update, and also Gavin for answering questions. I know our finance team are very busy, but they're always there at the end of an email to answer any questions. There have been additional costs because of the pandemic, and also it's also been referred to the more rigorous actions that have been needed as part of the audit process. So thank you. It's been a good collaborative effort, and I think we must support this recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hughes, did you want to comment?
Yes, I'd like to propose an amendment to the motion, and that is to include the following words at the end of Karen's statement, and that is in relation to working with PSAA. And it's so we're working with PSSA, noting that all organisations, public and commercial, have been affected by the pandemic, and the losses arising should be shared fairly between them. So that's my proposal. Shall I read them out again?
Yes, please.
Okay, so this is to do with the renegotiation of the fees by PSSA, and we would be delegating Karen to work with PSSA on those fees, and I would then add, noting that all organisations, public and commercial, have been affected by the pandemic, and that losses arising should be shared fairly between them.
Right. Well, I think I've got to put something in on this one straight away, in the fact that what others are doing, sorry, Councillor Hughes, to other members, I understand your point that other councils are going through this, but this is down to us and our proposals for what is actually down here. We cannot vote and talk about other people's and other councils doing what they're doing. We're offering the delegated power for, obviously, our financial director to make sure that we're getting the best value for money, and we've always said that we put a lot of trust in her, and I don't think those extra words would benefit anything, to be fair, upon that. I will go to James just to ask that question, but that's how I feel upon that added bit. James.
Thank you, Chair. As I understand from what Councillor Hughes has set out, it doesn't materially change the recommendation. It is just noting a position which I'm assuming Councillor Hughes wishes the authority to take by proposing that. So it doesn't materially change it. It's merely making a statement as such to accompany the decision.
So is it a statement really that can come into a proposal on it then?
No, in terms of, you know, is it an acceptable amendment? Yes, it is an acceptable amendment. It doesn't change the decision. It is adding to it, albeit it is simply for this committee to note, as Councillor Hughes has set out. So it doesn't detract from the position that's been recommended. Right. It's just adding an additional point to it.
Right. I'm going to go back to Councillor Morley, considering Councillor Morley, you put up the proposal. Do you accept to put in these extra wordings on?
Yes.
Chair, point of order, please.
Councillor Purdy.
I'd like to ask the question if this is something that we can impose. Can we impose that it's shared equitably? I'd like some views on that, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I can help, it's not something that this council can impose, but I'm not sure that that's the suggestion from the wording from Councillor Hughes. I think that the wording that was read out is effectively setting out something that this council or this committee would like to see, rather than making it a requirement binding anybody else.
Can I
just add, please, James? I've tried to write down, councillors, I've tried to write down what you've said, but I've not been quick enough to follow your words. I think it would be helpful to us all if you were able to read out slowly so we've got the full gist of your proposal.
Yep, just a minute, I'll need to bring them up again. The purpose is really, as I understand it from what has been said, the PSAA is the negotiating body, so that we can't influence them. We have no real final say in that. So all we can do is ask them to note a position, and that is what I'm asking, that we put forward a position that we would like them to adopt, and it's up to them to adopt it. And the position is, so we would be noting that all organizations, comma, public and commercial, comma, have been affected by the pandemic, and that losses arising should be shared fairly, not equally, but shared fairly between them.
Thank you. That's helpful, Councillor Hughes. Then I personally got no problem with that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Morley, are you still happy with the on it?
Yes, I'm more happy to accept it now than I was before. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with that, we will take that as the addition, sticking with the Councillor Morley's proposal with your additions to it, Councillor Hughes. I can't see anybody else upon here looking to do anything, so I'd like to go to the vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. So members will go in alphabetical order, and if you can indicate whether you're for, against or abstaining. So beginning with Councillor Allison.
For.
Councillor Archer.
For.
Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Buttle.
For.
Councillor Chapman.
For. For.
Cruz.
For.
Donnelly.
For.
Councillor Hill.
For.
Hobson.
For.
Hughes.
For.
Councillor Morley.
For.
Councillor Purdy.
For.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
For.
Black.
For.
Councillor Sutton.
For.
It's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. We take that as is. I would just like to thank Gavin and John for coming tonight to our meeting, and for the work that you do and work along with Karen and all Karen's staff for bringing these to us. Many thanks. You're quite welcome to leave the meeting if you wish. Or if you want to stick with us, then carry on.
Yes,
okay.
thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, we will move on. Item 7, fees and charges for 2021 and 22. Karen again, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is actually a joint report from me, the Director of Regulatory Services, Director of Corporate and Customer Services, and Director of Community and Environmental Services. We've proposed fee increases of 2% to most fees and charges, except for the following fees which have been frozen. And those are car park pay and display, Bakewell stall market rents, land charge search fees, and taxi licensing fees. Any other significant change is explained in the report. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Anybody with any questions? No? Councillor Ratcliffe.
Yep, thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to ask 2 specific questions. First of all, on pest control, I do appreciate and agree with the concessions for over 65s, but my question is really asking, are there no, or have there ever been, concessions for families or individuals who are on welfare benefit, the category that I term the impoverished residents of our community? My second question is really relating to car parks and the freezing of the charges, which of course I am wholly supportive of. But I've asked this question before, and it's something of a general question. I would like to read at some point an assessment of the impact that COVID has made upon our car park use.
Okay, thank you for that. Tim, is that more of your line or?
I think I might be able to.
Oh, right. Okay. Sorry, Karen.
So on both of them, on the pest control fees, I think at some point in the past there might possibly have been concessions for people on low incomes, but my recollection is that round about, I think it was 2009, the then overview committee did a big exercise looking at fees and charges for environmental services. We looked at pest control, we looked at cesspool emptying and several fees and charges. And we decided at that time that fees for people on low incomes were not sustainable in terms of the council's financial position. And from that point on, they weren't applied to a lot of our services.
It'd be nice at some point to revisit that.
Thank you.
On the car parks, we do monitor income. I'm just trying to find the latest situation. Just bear with me, I'll be able to tell you what the shortfall is at the moment.
Don't put you under pressure at this moment, Karen.
No, it's fine, I've got it to hand. It's just opening the spreadsheet now. So as at the end of December, the original budget for car park pay and display income for this year was £2.4 million. We then revised that in August down to £1.3 million. So at the end of December, the proportion of the revised budget we'd expect to have received is about £1 million. We've actually received £1.3 million. So we're £300,000 up on our revised estimate, but we are actually still £1 million down on the original.
Right. Oh, well, that's it.
Some of that we will be able to claim government grant for, because at the moment they're paying effectively grant on 75p in the pound above a certain amount of losses. So we won't get 75p in the pound, but we'll get a substantial amount of grant towards that.
Thank you ever so much, Karen. That's really useful information.
Thank you very much, Karen, for that. Yes, definitely. Councillor Slack, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I have two questions, Chair. First of all, I'm pleased to see that the pest control figures have come down. That's pleased. I suppose a reason for that probably is helping the residents out at this difficult time. That's one of the questions. Is that correct? And also, what take-up is there of the new green initiative, the discount? How many people have taken that up? Have you got those figures? Probably haven't got. Tim might have those figures, or Ashley. Yeah, them two questions mainly, Chair.
I think I can answer the second question. Again, if you just, I think it was reported this morning that we've collected 88% of the forecast budget.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
For the garden waste subscriptions. I'm just trying to find the exact amount for you. Here we are. Right, so the amount that we've collected, sorry, it's just opening the spreadsheet, taking a while. So we've now collected just over £400,000, which is 88% of the budget, which is more than we perhaps expected to have collected at this stage. Very good.
Yeah,
since we sent out the leaflets in the last week, we've had another surge of income.
Yeah. My first question was, pest control has been reduced from last year, and it's going back up again next year. But is this generally because of the situation with people's finances, so forth?
I can pick that up, Chair. The pest control figures have increased this year, for next year, Councillor Sack, in line with inflation. What we've got there are figures that relate to the amount before VAT and then after VAT is applied. So they are being increased in line with other fees and charges.
I thought rats and mice and bugs and that had come down slightly, have they, Tim?
I think you've misread it. Sorry, Councillor.
Have I misread it? I beg you. I apologise if we have. Yeah. So,
the only ones that aren't moving are the ones that Karen had already explained.
Okay.
On them. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay, thank you. Right, okay, I've got no more questions. I'd like to move to debate. So do I find a proposer for this? Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to make a comment, first of all, about the support for residents, and one of our colleagues alluded to the concessions for car parking. The very prompt response that was made by Ash and by Tim also, I'm not sure who got to the finishing post first, was the concessions made at St Oswald's Hospital in Ashbourne. 40 spaces have been made available, thus meaning that the staff at the hospital can now use the leisure centre car park, enabling vulnerable patients to take up the appointments and the parking. Sadly, reading that a lot of these appointments, for whatever reason, haven't been taken up. However, the authority are doing their very, very best. And I do think in all our conversations, it's nice to acknowledge the fact that we've never been in this situation before. And I certainly would like to say thank you very much to absolutely everybody, Paul, and all your staff, heads of service, everyone, for the efforts that are being made. I'm not a crystal ball glazer particularly, but I can't help feeling that our chum Rishi Sunak will come up with some more funds later on in the year as things transpire. But I'm more than happy to support this report, Chair, and thank you for everybody's efforts. Very difficult times. Thank you.
Okay, it's been moved by Councillor Morley. Do I find a seconder? Councillor Hobson.
Yes, Chair, I'm happy to second. It was a comment, really. You know, we are in challenging financial times, but I'm pleased to see that particularly the car park charges and Bakewell Market store fees are frozen. We've got to look beyond this pandemic and welcoming residents and our visitors back to our towns and villages so that they will support our businesses and facilities, hopefully this summer. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chair. I would also give this my support, and just to comment that the large majority of the charges, particularly the ones those affecting domestic charges, really at 2% only amount to pence increases, which isn't going to cause anybody major hardships. So it's fine by me.
Thank you. Councillor Slack, did you want to make any more comments?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I agree with the other speakers. I think this is acceptable. There's just on page 30, residents draw my attention to this. Actually, there's been a big increase, hasn't there, in residents parking bays. From in April 2018, it was £92, and now 3 years later, it's £331. So it's an increase of well over 30% in 3 years. So, is there any reason for that, or on page 30? On page 30.
Yes, we've got it. I will go to Karen, but I think if you read through it, you will possibly see the reasoning in from that. But I will bring Karen in.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Karen,
yes. Thank you. As it explains on page 30, the large increases relate back to a decision made in December 2017 that these fees will be progressively increased up to a certain level. And the charges that you're now considering for 21-22 are the last that result from that decision.
They've reached a figure now of the Karen where these
Yeah.
level off. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else want to make any comment? Doesn't look like it. If that's the case, I'd like to move to the vote.
Thank you, Chair. So members, again in alphabetical order, please indicate if you're for, against or abstaining. Councillor Allison.
For.
Councillor Archer.
For.
Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Buckle.
For.
Councillor Chapman.
For.
Cruz.
For.
Donnelly.
For.
Councillor Hill.
For.
Hobson.
For.
Councillor Hughes.
For.
Councillor Morley.
For.
Councillor Purdy.
For.
Ratcliffe.
For.
Councillor Slack.
For.
And Councillor Sutton. For. That's unanimous, Chair.
I take that motion as carried. Thank you very much, everybody. And they will come into effect April 21. Okay, move on to the next item, Microsoft 365. Okay, I'm bringing Glenn in for this.
No, it's my report.
No, sorry,
Chair.
it's you. It's Karen again. Sorry, I've got it down. The other one. Sorry about that.
I hope that this report is self-explanatory and I haven't got anything else to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think we've all had it. So, Councillor Hughes, you have a question? You're on mute. Sorry, Councillor Hughes.
Sorry. Yes, it's one single question. Thank you very much. And it doesn't require an immediate answer. I feel that the cost is probably greater. The net cost is probably greater than we will actually see because we won't have the cost of buying the software in the future. So, a question for Karen really. Has she estimated the savings from not having to buy licenses for the PC software in the future, as opposed to the one-off licenses rather than the recurring licenses? And has she got any idea at all what the savings will be overall on a period?
Okay, is that a question that you can give an answer to at this moment, Karen?
I can partly answer it now
Okay, thank you.
by saying that it's not straightforward because previously we bought the licenses outright, and so that cost would have been in the capital programme. Now, because of the licensing model that Microsoft are using, it becomes a revenue cost. So we won't see any savings in the revenue budget. We'll see them in the capital budget. And I'd have to look back to the last time we bought them to see what it then cost us. I don't have that to hand.
Thank you. I don't expect you to look back because it'll be too time consuming and you've got better things to do, I think. But I just wanted to raise that as a point.
Thank you. Councillor Ratcliffe, please.
Thank you, Chair. Often when I look at computers and software, etc., I relate what I'm reading to my own domestic circumstances. And I know that the licenses that I hold, I'm often needing reminders about them. And sometimes I forget even the reminders. So my question really, Karen, is perhaps quite a straightforward one, but it's the impact or liability that might come about from having a subscription-based licensing model as opposed to that of a perpetual one. does it open up any areas of consideration for us relating to what I've just said?
I'm not an expert on licensing for a start, but my view is it's just the sort of the fee paying model that it changes. I don't think it changes, especially the service that you get and the legal liabilities that there are. You're just paying for it on an ongoing basis instead of paying for it outright.
Councillor Allison, question?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've got about 4 questions. When are you anticipating, Karen, that the accounts for 365 will be rolled out to staff and members? Will I be able to access my 365 account on any of my own devices? And I know there's an issue around, well, there's a constraint on this project around the available resource to implement 365. Has any consideration been given to actually buying in the resource to facilitate the implementation of 365? And also, what you're moving to a software as a service through 365. What and actually that is then maintained by Microsoft. What savings are you expecting to gain from the reduced support you need through the joint ITC service that you get at the moment? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll try to answer those. In terms of when we're rolling it out, I think the ICT joint service is planning to roll it out first at North East Derbyshire and Bolsover. Let them get all their headaches and bugs out of the way, and then to roll it out to us. And they have said they'll probably do it in a phased approach rather than a big bang approach. So I'm hoping it'll be rolled out sometime within the next financial year. The decision about own devices isn't something that we've considered yet. At the moment, we don't allow own devices because of the cyber risks, the data security risks, but that will be something that we'll be looking at in due course. The available resource to implement. I have asked for a £5,000 contingency sum to allow us to buy in some external consultancy for the implementation should we need it. And the savings by the maintenance. We haven't at this stage assumed any savings from the joint ICT service from the maintenance. I think they haven't indicated to me that the maintenance will be any less difficult than it is now. In reality, if there were staff savings from the joint service, that would probably be put into another project instead.
Thank you for that. Does that help, Councillor Allison?
I think so, but I've still not got a timescale.
Okay. Can I ask Karen that if you could look into this possibly with, because we are rolled in with North East Derbyshire now, yes, yeah. with this, and possibly get some information back to Councillor Allison with this?
Yes. I mean, as I said, I hope it'll be within this financial year, but I'll ask the ICT manager to do a more specific plan that we can circulate.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Purdy.
I'm prepared to move the motion unless you want to get more questions, Chair.
Okay, well, I don't see any more questions, so you're prepared to accept?
Yes, I move the recommendations. I mean, this is, there's probably people more IT buffs than I am, but it seems to me that over the years, many years I've been using IT, it's either Microsoft or Apple. You know, if you go into a shop, there's a wide display of different goods on the same table, but here we seem to be limiting market and stung by them and held by them. I don't know what any alternatives there are. But but I think that it's prudent that we go down this route. It's going to be a big improvement for the staff and bringing in the CRM system as well. We will look at if they can be for personal use. I doubt it because, as Karen said, we've got to look at security. And I'm pleased that North East Derbyshire are starting on this first. As Karen said, there might be some hiccups and headaches with this.
Thank you. Councillor Buttle, did you wish to make a comment or second this?
I'm going to do both. I'm going to second it. And I'm also going to say that this is a really good choice. Microsoft are going carbon negative by 2030. So that's a load of our scope 3 emissions dealt with. So it's actually a fantastic choice and I'm very pleased with it. And I think it makes very good sense indeed. So there we go. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Buttle. Councillor Hobson.
Chair, it's just a comment. I've listened to what everybody else has said, and I think the impacting priority services like processing housing benefits and administering waste collections, which are very important to our residents, you know, we've got to keep on top of these things. So I'm all for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I support this this motion as well, and I'd agree with what Neil said, that there is a benefit from moving to, well, staying with Microsoft in terms of environmental benefits. And there's also a benefit in staying with Microsoft because everyone else uses, most people use it. There are options that we could go to. There's one from Google and there are open source options. But overall, I think the cost of change would be far greater than staying with Microsoft. And further, SharePoint is probably the leader in terms of document management systems, and it's an excellent product, and it will be one that will help increase the efficiency of the district council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Allison.
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment. I use 365 regularly in my own workplace, and it's an excellent product. It's a great product to encourage collaboration and productivity among staff. The sooner you can get it installed, the better, as far as I'm concerned. Just to clarify, when I asked about whether you could use it, access it on your own accounts, it's not for personal use. Basically, these are your Microsoft accounts are about any device, anywhere, anytime. That's the way it's marketed and that's the way you can use it. So basically you can use your own work account on any device that you've got, you can access it. So just for clarification on that point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I'd like to go to the vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. So members, please, if you can indicate if you're voting for, against or abstaining, beginning with Councillor Allison.
For.
Councillor Archer.
For.
Bull.
For.
Councillor Buttle.
For.
Councillor Chapman. Sorry, Councillor Chapman. You're on mute.
You're on mute, Councillor Chapman.
Sorry, for.
Thank you.
Councillor Cruz.
For.
Councillor Donnelly.
For.
Councillor Hill.
For.
Councillor Hobson.
For.
Councillor Hughes.
For.
Councillor Morley.
For.
Councillor Purdy.
For.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
For.
Councillor Slack.
For.
Sorry, Councillor Sutton, I didn't catch your vote there.
For.
For. Thank you. That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So that is carried. Now move on to item 9, Digital Transformation Project Update and the CRM funding request.
Thank you. Just to give you a quick overview of the report, it's intended as an update to the committee for the activity on the CRM project since April last year, April 2019, and covers a number of the key functions and deliverables that have occurred in that project over that time scale. Firstly, I'd like to confirm that the CRM launched on the 1st of April 2020 as planned, alongside 3 integrated payment systems which handle payments for back office payments, self-service payments, and replace a number of existing internal financial systems for reporting payments through the various methods. The system launched with 49 forms, which replaced all of the existing, if you'll forgive a term, dumb web forms on the website, which function by virtue of gathering data and then emailing that to an internal office function to progress a request afterwards. Since the system launched, we've expanded it to include over 80 of the district council services to be available online, and there's increased the number of smart forms within the system significantly during that period. The smarter forms allow for a better experience for individuals completing service requests. It gives the ability for those individuals to be able to track the progress of a range of their requests, and is smarter in the back end in that a large number of the forms are either fully automated or integrate into other systems to improve response times and reduce the administrative burden of the council of handling a number of those processes. In the period of 1st of April 2020 to the 31st of December 2020, we've had over 46,500 service requests through the CRM system, with 91% of these being submitted via the customer directly through the self-service functionality. We've also had nearly 4,000 residents and businesses register for an account, which allows obviously those businesses and residents to be able to track the progress of their requests, as well as get some upfront data presented to them when logging into the system, particularly around waste functions. The system itself has been instrumental in the District Council's response to the COVID crisis. It's allowed residents and businesses to interact with the council during lockdown periods especially, but also while council offices have had to be shut, by making a wider range of services available online. It's allowed more staff members to work from home due to the newer infrastructure and technology that we're using in the integrated solutions, which particularly during the first lockdown phase, whilst we had to obviously handle a large number of staff away from the office, increased our ability to respond to residents' requirements and requests. It's also automated a wide range of those processes, again allowing for a reduced number of staff during that period to handle the same volume of requests from residents by simplifying processes significantly. It's been further crucial in our response to the COVID crisis in support of businesses and residents in relation to the business grant schemes and the other COVID support measures for opening up businesses and for residents requiring support following test, trace and isolate schemes. The system itself has been used to provide fully managed end-to-end solutions for all of the business grant schemes that we've launched, starting with the discretionary grant scheme in the July-August time, and through to the latest COVID grant schemes for businesses that are still ongoing at the moment. In addition to allowing businesses to be able to apply for their grants online, the system automates a number of the processes to make that as smoother process as it can be for businesses, as well as reducing the administrative burden to the council. The fact that we've got the account tracking has allowed businesses to be able to track the progress of their grant schemes and applications throughout that time, which in turn has reduced the administrative burden on us through unnecessary contact reduction. The system has also had a number of forms in supporting businesses to open, including the ability to apply for pavement licenses, the tracking of businesses reopening following the first lockdown, so that we can obviously make sure that appropriate solutions have been put in place in terms of a COVID secure environment. And again has allowed businesses to track that progress throughout the system and to automate the connections in with other partner agencies, particularly in relation to the pavement licensing. The volume and complexity of the grants that we've seen, particularly since October, and the introduction of the tier systems, along with the first lockdown grant and then the tiering grants afterwards, has had a significant impact on the digital transformation team's wider project plan, which has necessitated us to push a number of projects further back in order to support the business in delivering the COVID response. It's also required us to seek additional technical consultancy time from the CRM providers in order to develop new features and improve, to implement new functions within the system that would allow us to automate more steps of the process, again, speeding up our ability to get grants out to businesses as fast as possible. That has come at the requirement for us to obviously procure additional consultancy day packages from the suppliers. To that effect, the report recommends that we purchase a 20-day technical consultancy package from Meritech Limited, who are the suppliers of CRM, at a cost of £12,000, and to be funded from the additional burdens grants that have been provided by central government in the support of the COVID crisis.
Thank you, Glenn. Not very in-depth. Councillor Purdy, questions?
Yes, two, please, Chair. Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Glenn. Thankfully, we did invest in this prudent measure, and now proving the benefit, especially with COVID coming in. So you sort of go, "Whew, thank goodness we did that." My question first is the 3,599 registered My Account users. What's your target for that? Is it potentially all the adults in the Dales? And two, what about safety? What about backup systems? What happens if it's shut down for some reason? And is the backup system independent? Thank you.
Yes, we haven't set a specific target at this stage for My Account users. One of the projects that we've had to postpone and push down the line a little bit is the expansion of the My Account functionality. At the moment, we've increased the number of services that can be tracked through the system, but we haven't increased, as we would have planned to have done at this point, the range of data that can be presented to the residents at the point of sign up and logging in. As part of that project, we'd be looking at setting targets for sign up. Ultimately, yes, we would like to get to 100% of residents. It's not traditionally realistic to reach literally 100%, just because of particularly our geography and some of our internet access issues. Doesn't necessarily warrant all users to sign up to get the most out of it. We did make a conscious decision at the start of the project not to enforce My Accounts sign-ups to be able to use our services. So we've gone with essentially a soft launch of the account system at this stage, with a view to bringing a more directed approach to that in the future phase of the project. In relation to the backup options, the suppliers of the system, so the CRM system itself is cloud hosted and sits on a set of servers Yorkshire way, for those who are interested. And we've just moved the servers over to a new server farm. We've also got a secondary site for backup server solutions, which is completely separate to the primary site for servers. We run on a virtualized server, so essentially any singular failure within a server farm won't have an impact on the service itself. But obviously, if that whole building was to go down, it automatically switches over to the backup redundancy site.
Good to know. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Ratcliffe, question?
Yes, and thank you, Chair. And Glenn, please accept that I am very supportive of this. And of course, I do note that the funding is coming from the government rather than from our own finance streams. But my question to you is really connected with the overall objectives, which are to promote a culture of digital by choice for customer interactions. Whenever I read that, I'm always conscious of the fact that there still are substantial numbers of residents who don't have access to computers and modern technology. Can you assure me, as a 76-year-old resident without any computer facilities, that you can still successfully handle my requests either for service delivery or indeed funding requests applications?
Yes, simply.
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah, no, yes, our whole approach to the digital transformation of the council is that it isn't at the expense of traditional methods of access for service. So the CRM system itself is used regardless of whether you do it yourself online or whether you phone in or whether you come into the town hall. So you get exactly the same service. You can just obviously do more online yourself if you choose to, but if that's not for you, that's fine.
Thank you, Glenn, and keep up the good work.
Thank you for that. Councillor Hobson, question?
Yes, Chair. I mean, it was following on from Councillor Ratcliffe, really. I know, I can't remember how many years ago, we did decide that this authority would be digital by default. But I think I did question then about the people who were elderly, vulnerable, broadband issues, the cost of technology. So it was just confirming that there is still a place for somebody to telephone in or somebody to call in when the town hall's open again. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, looks like I've exhausted questions. I'd like to move to debate. I'll find somebody to propose over this. Councillor Chapman?
Yes, Chair, I'll move this. This is obviously an important facility for this council, particularly in the current climate. So I have no hesitation in proposing this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Donnelly.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm happy to second the motion. I think it is an excellent idea, and I think it's nice to see we are moving on with the times. So I'm quite happy to second it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Slack, did you wish to come?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was going to second it, and I'm fully supportive. Tom seconded it, so I'm fully supportive of this. It's in these difficult times, it's a great help. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who wishes to make any more comments? I will echo the same as all the others. It sounds very good, and we are moving along with the times, and I think it is working well as regards getting some of these applications out that I'm sure it would have been a bit more difficult had it been on pencil and paper and people running around trying to sort it out. So with that, it's been proposed and seconded. We'd like to go to the vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. So members, if you can indicate whether you're voting for, against or abstaining. Councillor Allison.
For.
Councillor Archer.
For.
Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Buttle.
For.
Councillor Chapman.
For.
Councillor Donnelly.
For.
Councillor Hill.
For.
Hobson.
For.
Councillor Hughes.
For.
Morley.
For.
Purdy.
For.
Ratcliffe.
For.
Councillor Slack.
For.
And Councillor Sutton.
For.
Thank you very much. Take that recommended as moved. Thank you. Now we move on to item 10, Treasury Management Outturn 2019-20 and the mid-year report of 2021. Karen.
Thank you, Chair. So this report covers the annual report for 2019-20 and the mid-year report for 2021. And it compares actual Treasury management activities against the criteria set out in the relevant year's Treasury management strategy. The preparation of these reports, which normally come separately, has been delayed due to staff prioritising other issues during this pandemic. The report shows whether or not key activities comply with the Treasury Management Strategy approved by members for the relevant year. The report identifies one area where there has been a breach. This is explained in paragraphs 2.40 to 2.42 of the report. It relates to the value of investments made in money market funds. The limit set by the Council for 2021 was £16 million, but £24 million was invested for a period of 34 days, exceeding the limit and causing a breach. This arose after the government transferred around £40 million to the Council in early April to fund support to businesses during the first coronavirus lockdown. This amount of cash had never been foreseen when the limit was set in March. Rather than leave the money in the Council's bank account, which would have also caused a breach, the excess funds were diversified over a range of money market funds, which had a credit rating of AA- and therefore the risk was low. The breach was reported to the Council's monitoring officer and it was rectified on the 5th of May 2020. All the other activities in the report are shown to comply with the strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions, please. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Karen, 2.17. Is it too early to expect any outcomes from the launch of the wide-ranging consultation on the Public Works Loan Board? Sorry, you're on mute, Karen.
On mute, Karen, sorry.
I apologise. I think the consultation only ended last week on that. So I haven't heard any outcomes yet, but I can let you know when I do.
Are there any more questions? Okay, then I'd like to move into debate, please. Do I find a proposer for the recommendations?
Chair, I'll move it. Everybody's gone mute, I think.
You would like to propose it, thank you, as a recommendation.
I'll second that, Chair.
Councillor Chapman, you would like to
second, yeah.
Okay, is there anybody else who wishes to make any more comments on this item? Then I will go to the vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. So members, please indicate if you're voting for, against or abstaining. Councillor Allison.
For.
Councillor Archer.
For.
Councillor Bull.
For.
Bottle.
For.
Councillor Chapman.
For.
Councillor Donnelly.
For.
Councillor Hill.
For.
Hobson.
For.
Councillor Hughes.
For.
Hawley.
For.
Purdy.
For.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
For.
Councillor Slack.
For.
And Councillor Sutton.
For.
Thank you very much for that. Take that as carried. Right, move on to item 12. As I discussed earlier, the proposed Agile Working Policy, please. Is it Deborah?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So this report proposes a new employment policy to replace the current home working policy. It's been recommended by Joint Consultative Group that this committee adopt the policy. A policy that's been written not because of the pandemic, it was actually in the work programme before the pandemic hit in March last year, but clearly working remotely through a pandemic, repeatedly through various lockdowns, has really helped us to inform the draft of the policy and consultation comments from employees as well. At 2.5 of the report, there's comments about corporate leadership's team response to the suggestion from staff that we should retain remote working outside the necessity of the pandemic. But CLT's view was that as a public service provider and a relatively small district council, that town hall presence and core hours should actually be retained. They also noted that Agile Working could support the District Council's climate change work, helping us to achieve the net zero carbon target with a reduction of travel. 2.6 of the policy lists of underlying principles, including that there is no right to Agile Working because service need must take precedence, that if Agile Working is approved, it's subject to a temporary agreement rather than a contractual change. And if staff are looking for a contractual change to change their pattern of work or their hours of work, then that's under the flexible working policy, which has got underpinned by statutory provisions. So it's separate to flexible working policy. The policy majors on data protection, health and safety issues in remote working, and certainly a risk assessment must be in place prior to anybody commencing home working, giving due regard to display screen equipment, regulations, rest breaks, etc., etc. The policy also talks about the challenges of team working and communication with having either a whole team of remote workers or a partial team of remote working, and the responsibilities of managers and staff around their own, looking after their own mental health and well-being when working remotely. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Deborah. Councillor Hobson, question?
I think Deborah's already answered the question. It was in relation to sort of like the mental health of people sort of like working perhaps alone at home. But I am happy to move it at a later stage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ratcliffe, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I think really my question is really looking for some confirmation of what Deborah has just said, essentially, because I took your point about the need to have a physical interface between the public when we get back to some sense of normality. But certainly during the length of this COVID crisis, home working is very much something that is on the cards. So I think what I'm asking you that is really for you just to confirm that what you've just said about this home working will be very much subject to departmental considerations and the requirements, as it were, of those departments in terms of this point about having staff available for the public at the town hall. My second question really relates to things that I've been reading about home working, about the need to have very good, effective communication networks there and broadband facilities, etc. And really just to ask the question, have things been assessed, as it were, in terms of this during the present home working and continuing interlude? Should this be taken up, would there be financial and logistical implications that would have to be satisfied by the authority? I did read back in March that there can be costs to the individual of up to £100 a month because of the fact that they are working at home. One of the examples, for instance, is the additional home heating and electricity use, for example. So I'm very much in favour of this, and I do support it. But I just wanted to ask you those things that came into my head when I read through the policy, and indeed your very good executive report.
Okay, so the first question about access to the public. This is why we've made it that directors make the decision about whether someone enters into an Agile Working Agreement, because directors have got that helicopter vision across their own service environment, but also between services as well, to make sure that if we agree to an Agile Working Agreement, it either maintains the present level of service or enhances it, because indeed it could enhance service, but clearly there must be no detriment to service. You know, that should ensure that we continue to have a good interface with the public, whether that's be through this sort of media, telephone, or indeed when we reopen the town hall, whether that's face-to-face in reception again. So hopefully that answers that question. With regards to the effective broadband and cost of more home working or remote working in different locations, because it's not just in the home, it could be other sites that we own or our partner sites, customer sites. Many staff have taken up the advantage of claiming tax relief because you can do that. And that certainly helped with something towards heating costs and broadband costs, because you can claim £6 a week tax relief if you are home working. And it was certainly something that came through the equality impact assessment, thinking about rural areas, even with the broadband, and also the costing of people in deprived areas being able to afford to home work. But of course, this is an option. So if those were issues, then we will retain the town hall, the staff to continue working within the town hall with its facilities, etc., etc. So this is an optional thing that some staff may wish to work remotely rather than be forced to work remotely outside the necessity of the pandemic. So I don't know if that answers your questions, Councillor.
It does indeed, and I thank you very much, Deborah. As someone, even though I'm a councillor with an allowance, I spend certainly an hour or two on the telephone and on the computer each day. Can I claim £6 a week tax relief?
I would think so, because anybody who has to have a home office can claim tax relief from the HMRC. So it's a very simple process to complete the form and get tax relief if you're paying income tax.
I don't think I've heard this before, but I do thank you for that information.
Can we backdate it?
This year, for the reasons of the pandemic, the HMRC have been very generous and said if you work at home for one day this year, you can claim the full annual allowance. So to the HMRC for that one. So certainly anybody who's been home working during the pandemic can make that claim. And a number of staff have taken advantage of that and had a change in their tax code.
Thank you for that. Councillor Donnelly, question?
Thank you, Chair. Now I'll wait for debate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Allison, question?
Hi, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I do have a question. It's an interesting approach that has been taken here to the introduction of agile working. Many organisations are actually doing a more strategic assessment of their roles and actually defining which roles within the organisation are suitable for remote working. Is that something that's going to be undertaken here at Derbyshire Dales? I mean, I'm just asking that because there are significant benefits to an organisation that actually does that definition up front in terms of potential recruitment and the type of applicants you may be able to attract to your organisation. So I just wondered if that's going to be undertaken.
To answer that question back to front, really, again in the equality impact assessment, we recognise that actually this could open up some of our recruitment to people who are of different ethnic origin, for example, who necessarily don't live in the Dales but live at a distance, and if they could work remotely, they could actually be more willing to consider opportunities that we've got. So that could actually be very beneficial, and also it could again attract quite a diverse range of candidates to work for us and to retain staff who don't have such a big commute, etc., etc. So that was a very much positive that came out of the equality impact assessment. With regard to the strategic assessment, this was something that the staff were actually generating through the employee group discussion, because a lot of organisations, banks or whatever, have actually considered closing office accommodation and having all their workforce remote because actually there could be cost savings. I don't think that's true of the district council because I understand that we own the town hall, so there's no necessary running costs over, you know, as an owner over the day-to-day running costs of heating and lighting and so on. So I don't think that will be necessarily beneficial to us. The corporate leadership team considered the strategy of doing that, and my comments earlier about, you know, we're a customer-facing organisation and we're fairly small, so you know, the strategy really is to retain the town hall and retain a presence in the district so that we are accessible to our customers and our residents, and that actually strategically it probably wouldn't be a good idea to consider closing the town hall and having the whole workforce remote or a considerable proportion of it remote. But I mean, that's something for members to debate probably in the future because that's outside the scope of this particular policy. But it's certainly something that corporate leadership team did discuss as it was raised by staff as a possible idea.
Thank you for that. I'd like to just bring in Paul Wilson just to see your comments upon that.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. I'd just like to pick up on a couple of those issues that have been covered by Councillor Allison and Councillor Radcliffe. And I think it's fair to say that throughout the COVID experience, an awful lot of lessons have been learned by the organisation, and there's advantages and disadvantages to home working has been demonstrated. But I think first and foremost, the way that we approach this as a corporate leadership team is that we are a public service provider. And that has always got to be the priority insofar as making sure that the needs of the organisation come first before the needs of employees in this particular context. But it is about balance and making sure that we get that balance right. And a lot of discussion took place on earlier versions of this policy with excellent consultation with the staff. But I do think we need to bear in mind that there will always be people who need to walk through our front door. And we must always be there to meet their needs. And whilst we might want to go digital by default for the vast majority of our services, we've got to be there when those people need us. And that's very much the balance that we're trying to get within this policy.
Thank you for that, Paul. Councillor Slack, did you have a question?
My questions have been answered, Chair, but I'll got comments when we come to comments.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Michelle Morley, thank you. Question?
No question, Chair. It's more for comment when we get to debate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, don't seem to see any more questions, so I'd like to move to debate. And can I go back to Councillor Hobson, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to move that the Agile Working Policy be adopted. As Deborah's already said, this did come to JCC group in December. We had a full discussion there, and in that group, Councillors Tom Donnelly and Peter Slack, who are members of that group, they're here this evening. There are union members, staff representatives and officers there. Deborah, it's an absolutely excellent report, and I do hope it goes through. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Donnelly. You're on mute, Councillor Donnelly, sorry.
I beg your pardon. Yeah, as Councillor Hobson said, we did a very good meeting in December, and I think that a lot of things was put forward by the officers, by ourselves and by the unions for adoption, so I'm more than happy to actually second that adoption. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Slack, did you wish to come back for a comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Donnelly in that case, the other councillors. It's been a great thing, this has, over this period, with the situation of COVID. We've seen more home working now than we've ever seen. And without it, our organisation would have been struggling to keep going. So I do think there'll be home working will stay, but same as Paul has just said, we've got to be there for the public. We've got to have a presence when they walk into reception. We've got to be there to show that we are there with the public. But I do think home working is here to stay, and I fully agree with that. A balance has got to be struck, and we can debate this again later when we get the right balance to be struck. So I'm fully supportive of this, Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, you're on mute.
Hello, because my dog was barking. Councillor Morley, would you like to come back in comments?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'd like to refer to Paul Wilson's comment about balance. And yes, I agree completely. We have to be there for the people that need us. But probably for a significant number of the time, whatever percentage that might be, as long as there is the face of Derbyshire Dales on a daily basis for those who need us, then I'm sure that can be accommodated. Working from home is a state of mind. Having done this for the last 20 years in a consultancy capacity, it can be very lonely. And Deborah, I think probably as an HR manager, you may have also encountered one or two comments from staff. I'm not sure how you get across the loneliness of working at home, but it takes determination, it takes organisation. You need to get up and dressed and ready for work and be at your screen for 9 o'clock or whatever time it is, just like you would normally do. And to keep that going is actually quite hard. And I did set up with, and there were 135 of them, sort of a chat room and a little bit of a quiet time room where we could all chat together and what we find difficult. And it's not a hand-wringing sitting in a circle session at all. It's what we find difficult and what we can manage. And I think this is the way forward. And to be honest, home working's been going there for such a long time, maybe for colleagues who haven't experienced it. But it's actually very good because you're at home more, but it's that determination and organisation that's so important. And I think from an HR point of view, Deborah, as I can see you nodding now, I'm sure you appreciate how difficult that might be. And if I can be of any guidance to you, having, as I say, done this for many, many years, I'll be happy to have a chat to you as to the way forward. Thank you very much indeed, and I'm fully supportive of the report. Thank you.
Councillor Hughes, did you wish to make a comment?
Thank you, Chair. I'd echo what Councillor Morley said. I've also been a home worker for a very long time, and what she says is absolutely correct. And you have to have a discipline, and it's very important for communication to be good, both informal communication and formal communication. I think with the adoption of Microsoft 365, we get Teams, which will help with communication on an informal basis and also a formal basis associated with work. But I would echo the need for the informal communication as Councillor Morley suggested in other ways. I would say that the agile working that I've seen from Derbyshire Dales during the pandemic has been excellent. And I think the performance of the staff during the pandemic has been far, far better than many other service organisations. We've seen the banks performing particularly badly in this respect, and making it very difficult for customers to get access to staff by telephone or in other ways. But as far as I can see, during the pandemic, it's always been possible to access services. So I'd like to commend, say how much I appreciate the staff adopting agile working during the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, I've got no more comments to be made, and it's been proposed and seconded. I'd like to go to the vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. So members, if you can indicate if you're voting for, against or abstaining, beginning with Councillor Allison.
For.
Archer.
For.
Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Buttle.
For.
Councillor Chapman.
For.
Councillor Donnelly. Councillor Hill.
For.
Hobson.
For.
Councillor Hughes.
For.
Councillor Morley.
For.
Birdie.
For.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
For.
Slack.
For.
And Councillor Sutton.
For.
Thank you. I take that as unanimous. It's carried. And thank you very much for the work that you've done towards this, Deborah, and all the staff that are accommodating doing the work through this period of time. I'm going to take item 13 as regards the minutes of the joint consultative group. Could I take Councillor Donnelly? Would you wish to propose this?
Muted, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to move the recommendation on those minutes. Thank you.
Seconder, please.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Slack. It's been moved and seconded for the minutes of the joint consultative group. Can I go to the vote with the show of hands, please? Thank you. I think that's unanimous. With that, I'd like a 5-minute recess for a little break of a drink or whatever. So if we can come back for just after 8, please. And by then, obviously, we will probably be going into exempt item anyway. Okay, thank you.
I'm pleased to see you've got your Nottingham Forest shirt on, Neil.
Councillor Donnelly and Councillor Alistair, are you there? Mr Sutton, I mean, sorry.
Christmas jumper left over, Gary.
Councillor Donnelly, are you with us? You're on mute, but I can't see your picture neither, Councillor Donnelly. Okay, it looks like Councillor Moore. Yeah, looks like everybody's back in the room. Okay, we're moving on to the item 11. Before, I'd like to propose that the press and public are excluded from this meeting on this item 11 agenda. Item 11, in accordance with paragraph 1 and 2 of the Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. On the grounds of the consideration that there may be items that require disclosure of personal information which are exempt from the public. Do I find a seconder for that one, please?
Seconded, Chair.
Councillor Purdy, thank you. Can I have a show of hands of all in favour for this to happen? Thank you. With